Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I've got a PS4 here in Glacier White or whatever they want to call it, that has a broken HDMI port. I already started taking this thing apart before I realised my microphone wasn't on, so good job. So anyway, if I hold that up there, you can see that the HDMI port is completely stoved in. There's nothing there on the inside. So this is pretty rough because there's a good chance that all the traces on the circuit board have been torn off. So I'm a bit scared of this one. But I'm going to carry on disassembling it. I've just gotten as far as taking off the top covers. I'm going to go and blow the dust out of it now, and then we can actually get the motherboard out of this thing and take a closer look and just find out if this is a complete non-starter or not. Alright, that looks a bit better than it did before. So I'm going to carry on opening this up. So I'm not going to go into super details on the disassembly process here because go to iFixit, basically. Which I might actually do in a minute just to remind myself, because it's been a while since I've done a PS4. But I think, because the PS4 is weird, you have to work on both sides at the same time. I think it's power supply out and optical drive out next. Then we flip it over and we take off that back plate, and then at that point I think we then get access to the motherboard. So let's keep digging. Right, lucky. I had a heart attack when I saw the bit of the HDMI port sitting there, and at first I thought I'd forgotten to undo a connector and I just ripped the connector off of the board. However, no, that's just the remains of the HDMI port. And the good news is, it looks like all of the traces are intact. Focus? Or don't, fine. There we go. Either way, it looks like our traces are all good. So this should be a winner. Okay, I'm going to transfer that thermal pad back onto the board, just so all of the thermal pads are in the same place. I'm going to move this to one side. And let's take a closer look. Alright, so as you can see, with a closer look there, very, very lucky. When pins get torn off like this, I would fully expect it to have torn up some of these traces, because some of these traces, like, you know, for example, this dude here that goes up here, these matched pairs, that's a really delicate pad. You know, that pad, it doesn't have a big ground point. Like these ones here that go down to ground, those are big and strong, and they're anchored onto a massive ground plane. They'll be fine. But these tiny little ones that go onto tiny little thin traces, or even like this one here that it doesn't appear to go anywhere. I don't know if that's a not connected or whether there's a via directly underneath it. But either way, those guys will just tear off at the drop of a hat. So I'm very surprised that none of those have been damaged. Very lucky. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to heat up my soldering iron and I'm going to put fresh solder across all of those pins and also onto the big anchor pins. So if I flip the board over here onto the other side of the HDMI port, you can see that we've got big ground planes on both sides. Trying to hot air this HDMI port, it's like trying to solder while you're on an anvil, basically. Massive ground planes both sides. So this is the point where a cheap hot air station won't do it. The first time I tried to do a PS4, it just went horribly wrong. Could not get it to move for love nor money. Whereas these days, reflowing these and using even a starter good hot air station like mine, I have a quick 857DW, that can get one of these to move, but you still need to prepare. So, fresh solder on all these joins just to wet the joins, then we can start heating and get this guy off the board. In an ideal world, I'd be wetting these joins with low melt solder, which would bring the actual reflow temperature down lower, making it much easier to work on. In a previous video, I did actually talk about having low melt solder. However, someone in the comments pointed out, that ain't bismuth, mate. And I took a closer look, and it turned out, no, my apparently low melt solder was just regular solder. In a surprise to no one, eBay deceived me. So I don't have any low melt solder, so I'm just using regular stuff just to help wet the joints a bit. So we're going to put these all over, and then we're going to get the hot air on. But just as a spoiler, I had quite a lot of trouble getting this guy to move, so I did end up using a little bit of plier action. But it's important to make sure that your joints are actually flowing before you try and wrench something off the board. Right, so I've wetted up all of my joints there, so now we're going to get the hot air station turned on, and we're going to give it the beans, and we're going to start heating this, and I'm going to be very slow and very patient, and we're going to wait until it literally just lifts out. Now, if we had all of the pins intact, it would be really important to make sure that everything is flowing before we try and lift or pull it out. However, because the whole thing got torn off, this is a pretty safe one, to be honest. There's not really any major risk to here. I just need to not knock anything off or overheat anything. Alright. Oh, I hate it. It's out. And after taking a break to let things cool down, I forgot to click unpause, so we rejoin while I'm cleaning up the pads. I've already just wiped down the data pins with wick and fresh solder and lots of flux, and I'm now clearing the anchor holes using my desoldering gun and assistive hot air. The assistive hot air is really critical here because it helps you keep heat in those big heavy ground planes and actually gives your other tools half a chance of being able to melt the solder that's deep within those anchor holes. There we go, that's the hard bit done. So we've got the old port out, I've wicked down the pads, and I have cleared the holes. So wicking the pads is easy enough, you can do that with the soldering iron. The hard bit is clearing the anchor holes, because you're not going to get the new port in if those are not clear. Unless you've got a really good hot air station, which, and I've got a middling one. But the technique that I used for this, I used my my trusty desoldering gun. Ha! So I used my desoldering gun with the heat turned up, and I used that while blowing with the hot air station in the other hand. So dual wield, both at the same time. Put some fresh solder on there, get some assistive hot air to help the desoldering gun get the heat right down into the anchor hole and pull all of that solder out. And it will come out. But yeah, using the combo of the hot air and the desoldering gun at the same time, very powerful when you've got really stubborn holes like this. So let's get our replacement port. Right, one replacement jack that I bought off eBay. And that just drops in there. Beautiful. Or beautiful? Why is that not lining up with the pins very well? Some judicious bending might do the job there. That'll do it. Good. Right. Now I'm going to flip the board over and I'm going to solder in just one of the anchor holes just to hold everything in place. I'm not going to put all of them in just so I haven't committed. But I do want this guy to not move while I solder everything. Oh, it's still sticky. Boost mode activate. Come on, get right down into that hole. Alright, I think that's going to hold. And now comes the part where I make a big old mess. I'm going to put a whole load of flux in there. And I'm going to use my too thick solder and my too big soldering iron tip to see if I can flow this in one go. Alright, there we go. We've got enough solder in there. Let's clean the iron. And now let's just see if we can drag that across. I do have a smaller tip. I do have a smaller tip than this. But I don't seem to have much luck with it. I usually find that just making good with a big tip with a lot of thermal mass is usually a better strategy for me. Although knowing my luck, because I'm now on camera, it's not going to work out. And everyone will already furiously be typing in the comments, your soldering iron tip is way too huge. Might be better off with the trusty wedge here. The knife edge means I've got to come in at an angle, which is actually not helping me very much. There we go. More flux is helping. Unfortunately, the flux also obfuscates the view. Right, that might be good. Let's clear the flux out of the way and see if that's actually soldered down. Well, I'd say that's good enough. I've singed the edges a little bit there, and there's no doubt that it's possible to do a neater job than that. However, I would say that is soldered on. None of the pins are sticking up. They're actually flat to the board. I'm happy with that. I'm going to commit to that, and I'm going to put down the rest of the anchor pins. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with that. I think that's all right. From my limited experience, PS4s seem to be the hardest ones I've done so far. The last one I attempted was on a Xbox Series X, and that was textbook. It was a brilliant port swap. I was really proud of myself. So you can imagine how frustrated I was when I realised that I'd stopped recording halfway through because I'd walked away to talk to a customer and forgotten to click start recording. So yeah. However, that's on quite firmly. I've just reinforced the 4 anchor points on the top as well as the bottom, and I put lots of heat into those joins just to really make sure that the solder had flowed into the hole, which is what you need. So I'm pretty confident that that guy is on properly and not going to come off. Let's reassemble the console, and hopefully it'll work. Okay, right. This thing just powered on by itself. Got a flashing blue light at the moment. Let's just see if it actually comes good. Oh, copyrighted content. Thanks, Ava Media. Guess I'll get one of the cheap capture cards that doesn't care. There we go, everyone. We have video output, and the white light means that everything is okay as well. So we're all done here. So that one was pretty straightforward. Took a little bit more effort than I anticipated getting the old port out. As I mentioned at the time, I think that's just down to the fact of just these PS4s are just hard work. Anyone experienced with working on consoles in the comments, I'd be interested to know your suggestions. Was that just that I needed more power in my hot air station, or was I doing something wrong? I think I had it flowing and I was too scared to pull it out. I was trying to go for a nice clean lift, and I just needed to be a bit more forceful, because that's actually how it came out in the end. I was just like, okay, I'm sick of this, pliers time, you know. But anyway, it's all fixed. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.